Good morning, folks. Jeff Jackson here, the ForageFanAddict. I got a 51, 52, now have 50, 50, 53, 53, 53, 54. I got a 55, 55. Well, I'm never going to be an auctioneer, but it's kind of fun to do that anyway. So we're going to start that way today. Welcome to your Forage Friday. Jeff Jackson. We are going to talk about residual herbicide carryover in alfalfa. We've talked about this many times, but we're going to go over it again because it's something very, very important as we make our plans to go forward for this following planting season. So one of the things we need to remember is that some of the residual herbicides we use in our row crop scenarios, and whether it be corn, soybeans, corn silage, even some of the small grain crops, we really need to pay attention to the residual activity of those herbicides we used the prior year, because we continue to see issues in our alfalfa stands that we really sometimes have a hard time describing. And as we go backwards in the whole system, that's about what we come up with that should be the cause of the problem. And what do some of those things look like? Well, first of all, I've been involved with a number of calls where they say, this alfalfa, man, you guys, it should be performing better. Why is it not doing well? Are your varieties actually having yield improvements? Well, to answer that question, yes, varieties do have yield improvements. And we have had significant improvements in persistence, quality, and some of those things in the last few years. So we know that that should not be the issue. But we also do know that we spent 2 decades doing a lot of glyphosate without much residual herbicide, and now we're trying to mix residual herbicides back into the system so we can control those harder to control weeds. And there are a lot of factors that go into the degradation of those herbicides. A lot of studies go into these things before they get to come out. So first of all, moisture. Did you get enough moisture, whether it's irrigation or rainfall, to actually get that activity working biologically in the soil to break down that herbicide? Another thing would be soil pHs. Different pHs are going to react differently in the soil to help that breakdown. Soil texture. So do you have sandy soils where maybe that could flush or leach out better? Do you have heavier soils that are going to bind to that and hold it a little bit more tightly? So soil pH, moisture, soil texture are probably 3 of the biggest things. Then you need to look at rate. Where are those double up spots? Are the end rows bad where you get a little extra as you turn? Depending on the spray system that's on the applicator, how that all gets done. So there are multiple things out there that can affect residual herbicide carryover into your alfalfa crop. These labels will see anything from 30 days to 60 days, 3 months, next cropping season, 2 cropping seasons. If it says 12 months on the label and you know that you've applied the right rate, it's going to be close to 12 months. Look at the weather, look at the moisture, look at the soil type and make a decision. But always, we're going to tell you, always err on leaving it longer than what you feel like you should, because an alfalfa crop's not the cheapest one to put in. That's one of the biggest pushbacks we have, is that alfalfa is probably one of our more expensive crops to establish or to use up front. Although if you amortize that out over the years of use, it's not bad at all. But up front, we got to pay that bill, get that established. Let's not have mistakes if we can avoid them up front. Because some of the things that we see are this. If it's severe enough, we will see poor germination, maybe no growth, and a very, very thin stand, obviously, or no stand at all. Just depends on how hot that actually is from that residual herbicide. So we'll see, again, poor germination, thin stands. That's one thing. There might be a full stand out there that just doesn't look good. So at this point, there's enough residual in the system to affect those roots enough that that plant's not establishing to its full potential. You can tell that it's stunted, it's weak, maybe it has some odd coloration to it, and it just doesn't look healthy. Some of these yellow, bronze-colored leaves, and you're going to catch it fairly quick. You can dig some plants and try to identify damage on those root systems. It's probably harder to see or harder to tell at emergence and right away that first couple weeks at germination. But the older that stand gets, you should see some damage down there. Sometimes we'll see where the root will grow down 2 inches or so, hit that residual layer, go sideways, left, right. They might look like they've been trying to grow in a bottle where it hits the bottom and then they just bush out at the ends. So there's root damage. So look for that. And if it's in that layer, it's probably going to be a little bit deep. It's probably not going to be right on top. But down there a little ways, you'll see some root damage. So therefore, you get stands that they germinate, they emerge, they try to grow, and then that root hits that stuff and goes, whoa, that's not cool. So we'll have a full stand, but very weak, odd-looking plants. Not going to grow fast, not going to look good. Then you might have this stand that looks like a full stand up front, doesn't outwardly look like you have a visual problem from above ground. But again, if we get that plant up there for a few weeks or month or two, and we can really evaluate how that root system has developed, then we can maybe tell if there's something with the residual. And you're probably not going to feel the effect of it right away, but you can have enough damage that it will slow it down. So how are we going to ever visually see in that field that we have a 20-25% yield reduction if we don't know that that herbicide's there? So some of those things can happen as well, where we have that poor performing, still green, poor performing, not meeting expectations whatsoever. The older fields are doing better. The old varieties seem to be better, as long as you get the right variety choice done up front. And that's a whole different discussion from Cropland and the ForageFanAddict, but we can do another one of those here someday soon as well. So that all can happen. And when we take and damage the roots, what does that do technically? So it basically inhibits that plant from picking up moisture. It inhibits that plant from picking up more nutrients. It's going to affect the nodulation of that plant, and those are all very, very important for a good, unlimited plant growth in a healthy system, right? So it is really a root damage problem, and we just really need to think, what did we do? What did we do? What did we do? So we don't have a problem as we go forward into the planting season. So just be aware of all of that, because again, you have a yield reduction or a poor performing field out there. What's your assumption going to be? Man, did I buy the right variety? Well, let's think about the whole system that went into making that variety try to do its job. Most of the varieties in the industry today are pretty good varieties. We do have genetic differences that product selection is very important, but when we take away the lifeline into that plant to get top growth, that's really going to be the problem. So again, this is really about awareness. We do have a published text sheet that you can utilize to go through the list and say, okay, these are all of the herbicides that could be used in these row crop scenarios that do have a residual effect on alfalfa. So if you need some of that information, please reach out to a Winfield United crop protection dealer or a cropland seed dealer. We do have that information available to you all. And if you want, you can look at your material data sheets for the herbicides that you are put down to see what those rotational restrictions are as well. But again, it's Jeff Jackson, the ForageFanAddict, talking to you today about residual herbicide carryover in alfalfa. And everybody, I hope you have a great day. We're going to close this thing off here. Now, Jeff's never going to be an auctioneer, but have a great day. Thank you.